Hello, ma'am.
I'm fine. How are you? I'm fantastic. Happy to have you guys here. I definitely think let's get into today's lesson, guys. As I said, and I mentioned earlier in other classes, that we are getting more and more finite in the things that we're doing in our lectures, right? We looked at the holistic picture of a clock. We spoke about a promise. We spoke about a performance, but we're now getting into the nitty gritties of what that hour can entail. We've mentioned features. We've mentioned what makes a great producer, and part of a producer's job as well is to ensure that this element of what we're talking about today takes place properly. We're talking about interviews. Does anybody want to share who in their mind as a presenter has some of the best interviews that you've ever heard? You know that if this person has ever had to conduct an interview, then I know for sure things are gonna go well. Give me any examples of presenters that you know when they are conducting an interview, things are going to go down.
I think I am the MVP. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Oh.
Ma'am?
Sorry, I can hear you. Yes, Simi?
Nditi, I think I am the MVP. Listening to her yesterday, and Big Zulu, that other guy were there, and it was actually nice. I enjoyed
Big
it.
Zulu and Sjava.
Yes, and Sjava.
Yeah, it was a very, it was a cultural experience. I really enjoyed it as well. What was your favorite part about it?
My favorite part about it was the prank.
That was kind of hilarious, wasn't it?
Yes.
Did you believe it?
I got so nervous. Yes, I was cringing. I got so nervous. I called again.
I love it. I love it. I'm happy that you were listening, because now you can actually pick up some of the elements of what you heard on the show and compare them to the notes that we're going to be sharing. Somebody else said Tivo Touch. Tell me why Tivo Touch? Okay, Masbulele is typing. While she's typing, telling us why she thinks it's Tivo Touch, let us get into today's topic. Interviews. Every station should have an interview policy or guide in place. Let me admit, Cindy Siwe. Its purpose is to guide presenters in the process of conducting good interviews by instructing them to follow a certain helpful technique. Here is an example of such a policy. Hi, Cindy Siwe. Right now, we're chatting about some of the presenters that you think conduct interviews very well. We had Zimi share that she really enjoyed the interview that took place yesterday on Home Run with Ayanda MVP, where we had Java as well as Big Zulu come through. Masbulele says Tibo Touch is a great presenter. So I'm just waiting for her to let us know what Tibo Touch does that makes him such an awesome interviewer. Cindy, if you also like to share, let me know. You can type in our comment section. An interview should be considered a feature and should have all the characteristics of a feature, a beginning, a middle, and an end, as well as a common thread throughout. All interviews must be target market related and must be passed by the program department. Most radio stations would have a policy that all interviews need to be approved by the programming department. So what we do at YFM is that every single Monday, every producer has a meeting with the programming manager, which is Pindi, and in that meeting we have the music department, we've got the sales department, and everybody shares what happens on their show. Part of us sharing what happens on our show is also the process of us sharing who is coming onto the show, so that the programming manager is aware of the people that are coming on the show. The best way to do it when it comes to interviews, because we usually have music interviews on our show because we want to position ourselves as a music radio show, we then go to music when we want to do interviews. They have the biggest in when it comes to artists, they PR and they managers. And also, if somebody that is up and coming maybe sends me an email privately, or their PR manager sends me a WhatsApp, I can then go to the music department and say, is this person worthy of being interviewed on a drive time show on Why? So the lady that I work very closely with is Cody, and she's the one that organizes the majority of my interviews on the show. She's absolutely fantastic. So once I've run it through her and she approves, we run it through our programming manager, and then the interview will happen. All right. Masipilele, we're still waiting for your response about Tibo Touch Pay. XFM's primary target market is 16 to 24 years old, LSM 7 to 10. Urban South Africans who are trendy, progressive, and aspirational, which means the following. All of the interviews and topics should reflect a strategic objective that serves to increase the percentage of LSM 7 to 10 listeners. With regards to social responsibility, there should be across the board topics with a slant towards the portfolios of HIV/AIDS and children's mandate. Interviews related to entertainment, music, sports, current affairs must strictly reflect the interest of the target market. So looking at XFM's primary target market, what does it sound like, this XFM station, considering its target market, the fact that it's urban and trendy and progressive and aspirational? What station jumps to you guys when we say XFM?
947.
Are you thinking 947? Good. I think when it comes to the LSM, definitely, I'll definitely say 947. Sally?
I would say YFM.
That's what I was thinking as well. I was like, this for me sounds very much like a YFM because of, the trendiness, being aspirational. But I also get what Zimi's saying in terms of 947, because if we're looking at LSM 7 to 10, like that's literally, some of the highest LSM members sitting there. It's people with real racks of money. So yeah, this is an example. This is for example purposes, okay? But let's carry on and let's see. YFM and 5FM, I completely agree with you as well, Tebogo. XFM targets its product and messaging delivery at its composite typical listener, Joe. Okay, so tell me, we've done this in class, you've done this in your assessment. What is a composite listener? Anybody, the stage is yours. I'm waiting, Pella, guys. We've done this extensively in class. You've done it as your assessment as well. Zimi?
Can I?
Please attempt it.
A composite listener is a person who listens. No, nah. Yeah, maybe it's a person who listens to radio, and I can't explain it.
You must explain it because you did it in your assessment, so you must be able to explain it, Pella Zimi. But let Sally help you. Sally, what are your thoughts?
I'm just trying, ma'am.
But this is the platform to do it. You guys know this is a safe space, so definitely try it out.
I think a composite listener is a person that kind of like relates with a certain radio station.
Mm-hmm.
They relate with the certain radio station.
I like that one. We're getting. Mm-hmm.
For example, YFM.
Mm-hmm.
The person must be around 15 to 35 there.
Mm-hmm.
Creative, is motivated, has trendy items like Adidas, Vans, like that.
Love it. We're getting warmer and warmer and warmer. Zimi, is it sparking anything more for you? Is there anything you want to add, Zimi? I feel like there's something you want to add.
For this question in the assignment, I got a total, but the explaining part of it, no.
It's the English that's defeating you at the moment.
Yes, but I understood it in the assignment and understood what you wanted us to do. So yeah, I got it right.
Explain, what did I want you to do in the assessment?
You wanted us to to develop a composite listener for EBMH radio. Wanted us to basically write ukuthi umuntu omamela EBMH radio typically umuntu onjani, like ilife yakhe injani.
That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Ah.
Right? That's a composite listener, right? A composite listener is what we call a typical listener of a certain radio station. Obviously, all the radio listeners or all the listeners of that specific radio station are going to differ. You will find that there are very wealthy people that have families that also listen to Y. You will find that there are very young, trendy, unemployed people that listen to 947, right? But we're looking at the majority makeup of that station. If we had to create a character for this specific station, what would that person look like? Are we happy with that definition?
Yes, ma'am.
We get it, ne? So the beauty and the importance about coming up with a composite listener is that whenever you conduct an interview, it becomes important to look back at what the composite listener is like at a station like YFM or a 947. If they do not fit the criteria, then there is no way we should be having that interview unless it is an exception. For example, Arthur Mafokate wanted to come to YFM to do a mix to celebrate 999s. I think they've been existing for over 30 years, right? What do you guys think about Arthur Mafokate coming to YFM and doing an interview and a mix? What do you guys think about that? Coming to YFM, Arthur Mafokate. Do you guys even know who Arthur Mafokate is?
Yes, well, I do, ma'am.
Who's Arthur? Tell me.
Arthur is that guy who has a kid or DJ, and that guy who has once collaborated with told me back in the day.
Yes, right? So how old do you guys think Arthur is?
40 something.
On the other side, way on the other side of probably 40, right?
Yes.
He's not 30, correct? Okay, Tebogo says 53. I don't know if it's legit 53, but I would also say 53, Tebogo. Right? So I'm leaning towards 53. So is it appropriate for an Arthur Mafokate to come to a station like YFM, to come for an interview and a mix? Sally, feel free to speak.
No, ma'am, I don't think it's appropriate.
Tell me why.
Because, like, for me, I don't really know who he is. So, and most of the audience, most of the listeners on YFM, they are in my age group. So, like me, don't know who he is. I'm not gonna have my attention on it.
Love that answer. Tebogo says in the chats, no, YFM listeners won't relate to him and his music. Absolutely correct. Because Arthur Mafokate is old. Arthur Mafokate, I would relate to him. And even then, I still feel I'm a little bit younger than his generation. But I am the generation that grew up on Arthur Mafokate's music. I know every single dance move from every song that he's ever released. So he targets me, but I'm at a youth station as a producer. So even in my liking in terms of music, Arthur Mafokate is way above. So what we then did in turn, because we do understand the importance of celebrating Kwaito, because YFM was a pioneer for, young music and a pioneer for people that wanted to be different and people that had a different movement that I wanted to introduce. Simi?
So, ma'am, would he be appropriate with Metro FM? Maybe.
Metro is still quite urban and youthful, but I think they might get away with it more because they're not a youth radio station. I would put Arthur Mafokate at Radio 2000 or Kaya FM. That's where I would place him. But again, because when Arthur was popping, YFM played the music, it's very nostalgic because his music was at some point played on YFM. So acknowledging him and the legacy that he's built is important. Right? Tebogo also agreeing with Radio 2000. So what we then said instead of having Arthur Mafokate come to Home Run, why don't we have his children come on Home Run? Because both of his kids are DJs. One, again, very close to my age. So he understands the transition between the Atamafokate era and then as well as the Owami era. Owami is the younger sister. She's more of the Yano's DJ. So we brought them both so they can speak about their father's legacy and then for them to then do a mix for us to see how they will incorporate an old school mix and make it modern for the YFM audience. So that's what we did. So that's the importance of understanding who your listener is, because if you don't know who your composite listener is, then you're going to bring somebody like an Azama Fukate to YFM. And you're going to have your listeners tuning out completely. So always find angles to it. Because as I said, he is a big part of the YFM culture. So we had to celebrate him in one way or another. But how can we do it in a manner that it accommodates our current composite listener? Okay, so let's look at Joe. Who is Joe? Meet Joe. Joe is young, energetic, passionate about South Africa and the world in which he lives. Joe is a huge fan of the world of popular music entertainment. He is media and tech savvy and always on trend. Joe understands his responsibilities as a young South African and global citizen. He lives boldly with these responsibilities. In other words, he's passionate about relationships, sex, friends, family, school, work, and ultimately play. Joe knows what he wants and knows that he has to create his own future. Joe loves XFM because XFM is a tribe, a group of people who talk to him, with him, and about him. Joe also uses XFM to be the first of his friends to be in the know on the latest relevant news and trends. That is the who is who and the what is what. With XFM, Joe is encouraged to live boldly and to amplify lives. Are we having any changes and leading towards what you think this composite listener will be, which station they best suited? Are you guys still keeping your original ideas about where you think your composite listener is sticking more towards? Zimi? Sally? Are we sticking with our original ideas of where our composite listener lies?
I think so, yes, ma'am.
What did you say again?
No, I'm switching mine because I said mine was YFM, but now I'm switching to 94.
You're switching to?
94.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And where are you guys switching to? Anybody switching? I'm still keeping Y. Anybody siding with me?
Ma'am, I didn't hear Useli.
Sally said 947. Sally said she's switching to 947.
With me, yay!
I'm YFMing or 5FMing. That's where I'm headed. Where are you guys headed?
Okay, I think I'm also switching to YFM.
Okay, you are switching now. Okay, interesting. Somebody's typing. We'll see what they say. Every good radio station should compose a composite listener to help presenters know who they are talking to. Application. The famous talk show host Larry King, Tebogo says 5FM and Y. Still remaining. I'm with you there as well, Tebogo. The famous talk show host Larry King said the best interviews are conversations. Your questions should come from your guest stories and not from your notes. You therefore need to be an active listener. I really want to emphasize this, guys, because we have a tendency of presenters that are, and I mean, they're called presenters after all, but they are presenting on air. And remember, in our previous sessions, we've spoken about how radio is a conversation between two people. You need to feel like you're just chatting, that person is just chatting to you. So the problem that we have with presenters is that they don't have conversations with their guests. And another issue that I have with presenters is that they are not active listeners. One thing I'd like to commend Ayanda MVP for is she's not really big on her producer, me, coming up with questions because she wants the conversation to flow. Being an active listener means that when you start a conversation with your guest, you're able to pick up certain things in their conversation that leads you to the next question. When you have an array of questions set out for your guest, they might say something very important in their answer that you don't pick up because they're so fascinated by asking the questions that are in your notes. So it is important to be an active listener so that you respond to what they say and not respond to where your notes indicate that you must go. Okay, XFM shows do many interviews on air. Many times these interviews are not properly researched, produced, and executed, and are usually very boring for the listener. How do you become an active listener? Okay, let's see what Tebogo says. How do you become an active listener when, as a presenter, you still have to control the desk and check everything is in order, and also thinking about the next question you want to ask? Very good and important question here, Tebogo. The reason why in most radio stations there are guests that come in on Breakfast and Drive is for that very reason. Not only because there are prime time shows, but at least when you run a breakfast show or a drive time show, then you actually have people helping you and offloading all of these. It becomes a little bit more challenging for the shows that don't have producers, don't have desk drivers, don't have, co-hosts, etc. But if you're a good presenter, then you must be able to handle this. There are many presenters that do this on their own. They run their own desks. We mentioned in previous classes, in previous classes as well, that there are some stations that just don't have producers for daytime shows or nighttime shows. So that means you then have to be your own producer. And if you've got the cash, you can outsource some kind of help from people outside. But otherwise, you have to do everything yourself. Again, though, if you're on a show that doesn't have a lot of elements running on it, it's very possible to run your own desk. If you're doing an early morning show, there's a lot of music on your show. There isn't a lot of conversation. You have 3 links an hour. It becomes much easier. But if you are running breakfast and you're Anel, or you're running drive and you're Tando, these people actually have people that run their desks so that they can focus on executing the show. Again, there are many elements, guys, that run on breakfast. So the person who's running their desk has to ensure that they're on time, because adverts have to go on time. Competitions have to go on time. The presenter needs to know what's coming up next. The presenter needs to maintain the conversations between the different characters on the show. Right? So what you want to ensure is exactly that, right? You want to make sure that you alleviate strain on your presenter by delegating certain responsibilities of the show. Deborah says, other than the club has a desk controller, I think his name is Ryan, she's able to fully focus on the show and delivery and not worry about pressing buttons. Correct. They do have a desk trainer. However, Ryan is the producer. So Ryan is a technical producer as well as a content producer. The desk runner, on the other hand, his name is Gavin. You might know him as Vin Diesel. So that team is humongous because they need to make sure that the money maker of that show is making the money. Okay, so it's very important. Thank you so much, Tebogo, for that question. And thank you so much for telling us exactly what needs to happen on the show in order for Anna to execute her work seamlessly. All right. Usually it's a case of guest A is available and they have many followers on Twitter, so let's get them to come in. Then we do a Google search about guest A and get some what do we believe to be good questions in which our listeners will be interested. Then guest A comes in and we ask them these questions. This at best leads to a mediocre interview that is not entertaining and engaging to our listeners. So another thing that you presenters tend to do quite often, Zimi, I'll get to you in a second, is that they will bring people in without understanding the reasons of why these people are in, but because they are popular on social media, then we think that we assume that they'll be great on air. And that's not necessarily the case. So as a producer, it's responsibility to find out if this person can carry a conversation and bring entertainment to your show. Because you can find people that are experts in a certain industry, but aren't necessarily popular on social media, but are so great at their job and so great at communicating. So you need to do your research quite thoroughly. Zimi?
Ma'am, can a desk runner make a mistake?
Of course. Mistakes are done all the time. It's not even like negotiable. Sometimes you press the wrong buttons because there's just so many buttons that you can press, right? But a great presenter will make sure that nobody ever picks it up. Mistakes happen almost on a daily basis. You might fire a song too quickly. You might fire the wrong jingle. You might fire the wrong, bed music. You might fire the wrong reaction. It happens all the time. But a great presenter will turn that moment into a content piece. And that's your responsibility as a presenter. It is very possible, definitely very possible to press the wrong buttons. Yes, it's your responsibility to run the desk, but there's too many things that happen. Yes, Simi?
So, what usually happens when a song is playing and then halfway through it, you pause and then they just go to like adverts? Did they press the advert button by mistake?
So it's one of two things: that, or we are late for ads, and now you must cut the song in half, which is terrible. That is the reason why a lot of these primetime shows have desk runners, because they need to keep time. Your desk will tell you, right? It's got an indication as to whether you're overtime or you're under time or you're on time. So it's not like you need to be so brilliant and smart that you need to realize if you're under or over. The desk itself will tell you if you're on time. It'll say you are 3 minutes under or you are 1 minute over. If you're 3 minutes under, it means you can play a song. If you're 1 minute over, it means perhaps you can shorten your link, right? Or you can play a shorter song. So instead of playing a 3-minute song, you can then play a 2-minute song. So if you find that a desk runner cuts a song in half and then plays ads, it probably means that they are very late for ads. Or it could mean they pressed the wrong button and we can't continue the song, so let's go into ads. So many reasons can occur because of that. But as I said, a good presenter will not make you even feel it. But mistakes happen more often than you think. Tebogo says the desk looks intimidating. Those buttons are a lot. They really are. But I must say, if you do it often, it literally does become second nature. But they are intimidating. But honestly, I also feel like it's a skill. Like, I don't think there's anybody who does desk like Gavin does it. He is an absolute professional. And I think it just takes a lot of training. He's been there for over 15 years at Prime Media. So I think he knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to desk running. All right. So we've done that, and we've spoken about getting randoms or very influential people onto the radio show just because they're popular. You need to understand that they also need to sound good when they get on air. We should want to be excellent and not mediocre, to thrive for excellence and to compete with the best interviewers in the world. Our competition is not only other FM stations, but also YouTube, Instagram, and all other channels that our listeners go to for content. There's another one that they left out here that I think is very important. What platform do you guys think they've left out here as a competitor for radio? Deboho is typing. Anybody else want to shout it out? There's a platform they haven't mentioned. They mentioned Instagram. They mentioned YouTube. What else are they forgetting that is a very close competitor to FM radio? Don't all scream at once, guys. What am I looking for? Zimi?
Facebook.
Facebook is another platform, but there's a specific one that I'm looking for.
Twitter.
Tando?
Twitter, man.
Another form of radio is called what? That's what I'm looking for. It's just that it's not live. What platform am I looking for?
Oh, a podcast.
Yes, well done, Zimi. They didn't mention podcasting here. They are the closest competitor to us. Almost everybody is launching it. Everybody's thriving in podcasting, right? You've got your DJ's Booze. You've got, who's this guy whose name starts with a P?
Penyo.
That guy. Very popular now, right? You've got McG and Saul doing their thing on podcast and chill. They've now got another leg to their organization called Popcorn and Cheese with Paul Pops and Robert Boy. So podcasting really is becoming like a really big thing. So they are becoming the direct competitors when it comes to radio. But there's so many other platforms, guys, of where people can get information, right? If you want music and you used to listen to only radio, what are you listening to now?
YFM.
I'm saying if you love music, né? And let's say you listen to any radio station, what other option do you have to listen to music?
Spotify.
Oh,
Spotify, right?
Apple.
Apple Music, YouTube Music. If you listen to radio because you love the interviews, what other alternative places can you listen to interviews? YouTube, podcasts. Can you see, guys? So more and more, we are finding different ways to access the things that we only used to get on radio. Before, we used to get exclusives on radio. But now, where are we getting exclusives? Where are we getting exclusives, guys? Where are we getting exclusives, guys? If we're not getting them on radio anymore, where are we getting them? Apple Music, Spotify, right? Because that gives you, as an artist, it gives you a direct, or, it gives you, it's not direct. What can I say? Immediate. Yes. It gives you immediate results. If I go now and I listen to a Java song or I listen to a Bobby Cooper song on Spotify, it will calculate me as a listener. As opposed to radio, it takes long for those results to show. So if I'm a Bobby Cooper, I'd rather take my music to streaming platforms. So radio stations aren't so, popular for doing exclusives anymore. Do you understand what I'm saying? So radio has huge, huge competition, guys. Okay. The 6-phase approach to interview prep. There is a 6-phase approach to interview preparation that is guaranteed to lead to excellent interviews. The magic comes from phase 1 to 4. If you get these foundational phases right, phase 5 and 6 will follow well thereafter. Phase 1, quality test. Be selective of the guests that the show books in order to get the best results. Ask the following 4 questions. Note that you should answer yes to at least 2 of these. If you only answer to 1, guys, we have a problem. Maspinella says the app of the radio as well. I guess when it comes to streaming platforms, that is the reason why radio has gone to have their own apps, so that people can still access information if they missed the show. So most radio stations now say that they don't want to consider themselves as radio stations, but they want to consider themselves as brands. So the reason why they moved to having their own apps and streaming platforms is because of competition. Okay. Are they a big star with a company like Universal Studios or a high targeted appeal? And can they tell great stories? Does one of the show players have a high interest in the guest? And will this create great entertainment? Another thing that's important, guys, you can book an artist because you think they're relevant to your show. But if your presenter does not have interest in having this person on the show, trust me, that conversation is not going to go well. So you need to ensure, for me, this is probably one of the most important ones, is your presenter needs to be invested in this interview as much as you, the producer, are. If they don't want this interview, then it's not a good idea to have it. You will hear it on air. Are they a great interview, even if they're not a huge name? Again, there are many experts in different industries that are great spokespeople for their industries that sound great on air, but aren't necessarily popular on social media. Those are some that you also need to consider. Will they set up one of the players on the show in some way? Phase 2. Spend at least 60 minutes longer preparing at the interview than the actual length of the interview. What do they mean by this? It takes a lot of hard work, guys, to prep an interview. I know to the listener, it literally might sound like you're just stepping into this, the guest is stepping into the studio and they're stepping out for maybe 10, 15, 20, at most 25 minutes. But the amount of work that happens behind the scenes is what builds up to a great interview. So if I'm looking to interview somebody, as I'd mentioned earlier, I'd go to the music department and say, I would really like this person to be on air. Because they have a better contact to the artists via PR companies or managers more than I do, they will then help me secure that interview. Once that interview is secured, I'm going to need certain collateral from the artist and their management companies. I'm going to need pictures. I'm going to need new music. I'm going to need bios. Those things are important. Once I've gotten all that collateral, I send the pictures and videos to our digital department. Music will handle uploading the music when the interviewer is there so they can hear their songs playing. And then the bios I will then insert into the prep sheet for the presenter to read. But again, a good presenter won't necessarily be asking the questions that you've set up for them for the interview, but they will be an active listener, play it by ear, and really have a conversation with the guest once they are there. So a lot of the work, guys, comes from behind the scenes. Before the interview is, there's so much more that goes into it. Remember to read biographies and get up to date to the person's career. Then develop the first set of questions. Develop a story arch in which you create a touch point. This could be a fun element that no other interviewer would do. For example, a fun activity such as a game. I don't know if it's Zimmy or Selly that mentioned that there was a prank that happened yesterday on the show, right? You always need to come up with an interesting twist to your interview to also just make the interviewee a little bit more relaxed and to give them a bit of a laugh. Phase 3, conduct a pre-interview interview. Conduct a 10-minute telephonic pre-interview with the guest. This is a foreign concept for the South African radio industry. However, it is common practice in American television as it helps to receive the best response for guests. It should happen telephonically at least 24 hours before the actual interview. The pre-interview interview can be done by the producer or the actual interviewer. Ask the phase 2 questions here. Ask the guests about how they feel about the story arc and the fun elements that they've developed. Keep note of what questions have the potential for great answers or stories and which questions receive mediocre answers. All right, so I want to get more into this and why pre-recording interviews is such an excellent concept, guys. So how many times have we had a telephonic interview and either the presenter or the guest says, I didn't hear what you said, can you please repeat? How often does that happen, guys?
It happens
How
a
often does
lot.
that happen? It happens a lot, right? And does it not irritate you as a listener when the phone lines are like, and especially now with load shedding, it becomes so messy, right?
Yes, it does.
It does. And sometimes, let's say, fine, I don't prefer telephonics anyway. So let's say you then want to have the guest in studio like we did with Java and Big Zulu, right? We only discovered halfway through them singing their song that Big Zulu's throat was not cooperating. So he just had to, poor guy had to sing, right? However, had we pre-recorded the interview and we noticed that Big Zulu had a bit of an issue with his throat, it would have been a lot better because then he probably would have had a bit of water, you would have taken a break. The beauty about pre-recording interviews, guys, is you're trying to eliminate as many things that could go wrong as possible. Yes, a live interview is more engaging and more enticing, you know, when you come to a radio station, but pre-recorded interviews help for on-air purposes. For instance, you could be playing a game with your guest and they don't really get the game. Now you must repeat the game 6 times before they get it, and that time is running out on air. But if you're pre-recording the interview, if they don't get the game first time around, you can keep playing it until they get it. And you only play the moment of when they get it on air. The other beauty about pre-recorded interviews is that sometimes the presenter enjoys the conversation so much that they forget that they need to go to news or they have to go to ads. Right? So if you do a pre-recorded interview, the technical producer will make sure that they chop the little clips to fit the clock so that we are well within our time and we can play everything on time. Pre-recorded interviews are not necessarily preferred, but to be honest, they're probably one of the best ways for you to flourish if you want to be a fantastic radio presenter. Okay, Debogo says, if you hear a rumor about an artist, for example, a scandal about them trending on Twitter, do you bring up the rumor as a presenter in order for that artist to set the record straight, or don't mention anything about the rumor to respect the artist and not to offend them? Okay, we've had 2 of those instances happen here on our show. I think I'm not going to mention the names because I'm going to give it away, but it depends on your presenter. There are some presenters that will go literally dive in head first into a conversation and cannot wait to get to the bait of the scandal or the controversy of a certain artist, right? Not all presenters are the same. There are some presenters that say, I just want to speak positivity into someone's life and I don't want to speak about their scandals. It depends on the presenter. And then you get those presenters that are like, bring on the drama. That's what makes me me. Is a MacG the type of presenter that wants drama, that is going to bring up a scandal if you come to his show? Yes or no?
Definitely.
Exactly,
Yes,
right? 100%. So he is a shock jock. That's what we call them. People that constantly want people to be shocked and to be like fascinated by what they're asking people and what they say on different platforms. He's not on radio, but he's on podcast. And he's quite popular. He's not the biggest podcast on the continent. Right? So he is more than happy to bring out any scandals. It's not a good or a bad thing. It just depends on the type of presenter and what kind of, rumors they would want to settle. But then you find unproblematic presenters that don't want to, ruffle any feathers. All they want is for somebody to come to the studio have a great interview, and leave there happy, excited, and ready to take on the world. Zini? Yes, Zini?
Speaking of scandals, ne, ma'am,
Mhm.
can I just ask, has anybody seen e what Maweni did on TV, guys?
What does that mean? What happened?
Ebetagata live on TV.
Where?
Hi guys, I get it. She has a show. I didn't know she has a show, but this was posted on Facebook, and she was basically telling the world ukuthi yena umuntu omjwayela kabi uzowenza so, and then they showed us imithi ayisebenzisayo, and then she took a black chicken wayifaka amanaliti wayidlisa umuthi wathi when this chicken dies, that's when the life of the person omjwayele kabi is gonna turn into shambles. And I was like, Johnny, on TV.
Look, if there's one thing about our different platforms, entertainment platforms, is they're evolving with the times. When I was much younger, we never used to have any spirituality elements happening on TV. But I think with the new age and things changing and people being openly and proudly, spiritual, people tend to do some very interesting things on TV and radio. Look, we've had Gogo Maweni come to studio, and she was nothing but a pleasant surprise. We thoroughly enjoyed her. There was nothing controversial that she came to speak about. We just got to learn more about who she is and what she does. I think it was when I probably my first week, if not my shadowing week of Home Run. So yeah, the world is becoming an interesting place every day. Let's hear what Deborah says. Laugh out loud, but Moja loves content that's shocking and controversial. That's why they ate that Gogo Maweni show. Right? Again, it's all about the platform. It's all about the type of presenters that do those kind of shows. You just have to know your target market. You need to know your composite listener. My mom is a firm lover of Moja Love. You cannot remove her from Moja Love. She loves, what is this one where X Repo? I think it's called X Repo. She loves X Repo with her entire heart. That's the kind of content that my mom loves. They know that that's their target market. We are not necessarily it. But we might like the more spicier stuff on Moja Love, like these kind of spirituality shows, right? So know your composite listener and deal the content that they desire. Lane explains that the presenter should now go back to the drawing board after the pre-interview interview and redevelop the game plan. Make sure that you have at least 3 great stories that you want to get the guest to tell. Develop a plan of how the conversation is going to run. Plan the open-ended question that you are going to ask. Develop and produce a fun and different element. It is important, guys. It is crucial for you to listen in to your interviews, see how you're going to improve them. If somebody wants to have like the pre-interview, now we're not talking the pre-records. Now we're chatting about somebody coming in to almost, I want to say, rehearse the interview. People don't have time for that, obviously, but America does it very well. So if that's what you want to venture into, then you are more than welcome to do so. Hey, could you guys tell that the first 4 phases focus mainly on the producer? Could you guys tell? And how could you tell? Could you guys tell that the beginning analytical parts, the admin, remember we chatted about what makes a great producer, and we spoke about the difficulties of being a producer. We mentioned that they work hard, they're underpaid. When the show goes well, they praise the presenter. When the show goes badly, they blame the producer. A lot of these elements to creating great interviews, sourcing out the interview, coming up with the questions, getting the research done, majority of that is done by the producer. Again, if you don't have a producer, then you have to do it yourself as a presenter. But that's more of a producer role if you're looking at your prime time or drive time shows. Welcome the guest, phase 5. The interviewer must sit down with the guest before the interview, tell them what the 3 stories are that you want to get them to tell, make them feel welcome. In other words, make the interview an enjoyable experience, make them coffee, offer them water, if it's available, have some merchandise available for them. Not a lot of radio stations do this, but okay, they should. By focusing on the human side in this manner, you'll make them feel more comfortable and will consequently achieve more from being there, right? I think that's the English. So if you have a guest coming, it is important, I think, for a presenter to sit down with the person before they start talking. So even if, I'm not saying they need to leave the studio, but maybe the guest can come into studio before the interview and they could just have a chit chat and establish some kind of rapport when it comes to what's happening with their lives, what's happening with, the guest. Again, somebody that does that very well is Ayanda MVP. She's able to just decipher, what a guest is going through, what they want to talk about. She's got these great angles that she preps them with before they go on air. So as a presenter, it is important to do that. Again, if your hospitality is on a high as a radio station, you'll always be remembered for that. I remember when I was on Anele and the Club, they created these rooms for them, right? So Anele has a room, Tando also has a room, and these rooms have fridges and coffee machines and snacks and fruit and whatever. Casper Neves came and he woke up so early he didn't eat breakfast. He was literally eating oats and the bananas and the strawberries, and he was having water from the fridge. So the more comfortable they get, the better it is for you. So if you've got the budget as a radio station, I would definitely recommend you do so. Finally, execute or carry out the interview, keeping the following techniques in mind. Entertain first and sell second. Take a page from the late night talk shows and discuss what your guest is promoting during the last part of the interview. Make it clear to publicists, handlers, and so on that the show will promote the guest project and that the goal is to have an entertaining and fun conversation. This will benefit the guest regardless of how famous they are. So this is very important. Usually when you find artists or famous people going on PR runs on radio, it's because they've got something to promote. Either they've dropped an album, they've dropped a single, they've gone platinum, they've gone gold, they've got a new series, they're part of a reality show, whatever the case might be. So obviously when they're coming to the station and requesting an interview, they're requesting it because they want to sell whatever it is that they're getting up to. It is the role of the presenter to almost put a heart on the selling part, because more than anything, people need to be entertained by the interview. You can wrap up in your last link with the reason why they came there, but don't make that the focus, because it makes it very obvious and the conversation just becomes sluggish. So make sure as a presenter that you are, you're entertaining with your guest. You chat about life, you play games, and only after, towards the end, can you then chat about, their new movie that's coming out, a new song, new merchandise, a new platform, new reality show, or whatever the case might be. So never make it about what they came for, but you can definitely incorporate it. I mean, yesterday on Home Run, it was very clear why Java and Big Zulu were there. They were promoting their album that's dropping tomorrow. But in all honesty, it really wasn't much about that. It was about learning about these two Zulu guys who came together, based on them having the same language and them coming from, the rural parts of KZN. So that's what you need to convince the listener with. Surprise your guests. Do something that will pleasantly surprise your guests, right? So away from the games, away from the pranks, you can also do something very special for your guests when they come. For instance, when we had Babi Cooper come onto Home Run, she is the youngest person to attempt to fill up Times Square in Pretoria. And that for us was a big deal. For somebody so young to want to do something so impactful, we bought her a bottle of champagne, we bought her some flowers, and we made her a plaque from YFM. So if somebody does something remarkable on our show, we want to recognize their greatness. All right. Avoid questions that already provide the answer. Please do, again, it's a leading question. Do not do leading questions. Do not entice your guests to answer questions because when you said something in your question that makes them want to say it. Guests will find it very difficult to answer. Ask them straight questions. Don't deviate. Don't influence their decision or influence their conversation. Avoid yes and no questions. Again, yes and no questions, we save them for quantitative analysis. When you have an interview, you want to make sure that the person is able to elaborate on what they're chatting about. Yes and no ends there. So be careful how you ask your questions. Be specific and follow up with questions about their perspective and feelings. Ask sensitive questions deeper into the conversation. You guys mentioned that, sometimes we want to chat about controversial topics, or you want to, settle a rumor. Is it okay for a presenter? Is it not? If it is okay for a presenter and a presenter doesn't mind the controversy or getting into deep conversations, then they can. However, they need to be mindful of the fact that they can't want to chat about it as soon as the person sits on the chair. The conversation needs to get heated. It needs to get warm. The guest needs to open up to you, and then you can throw them with the controversial questions. So don't ruin the interview by asking them the deeper questions. Let them warm up to the audience so that even if they decide they're going to stand up and leave, at least we had a bit of an interview. interview with them. All right. After you establish a relationship with your guest, then alternate difficult questions with easier ones. Use question clusters. This can be an effective device to help you delve deeper into someone's personality. A series of questions on one topic are best asked one at a time so the guest is not overwhelmed. There is a tendency of presenters, even podcasters, where they will ask a guest 3 questions at once. There are 3 parts to my question. I have 2 questions for you. That confuses the guest. Ask them 1 question, and then you can keep building as you go along. So don't want to cluster all of these questions together, and then you're asking them all at once. You have a 2-part question. It's too difficult. Break it up into segments, because also maybe they might come up with something that could allow you to come up with another clutter of questions. But don't ask your guest too many questions, because they tend to forget. Again, how many times will you find guests who says, Akana, what was that question again? You don't want that, right? It ruins the flow of the conversation. Often guests are not available for pre-interview interviews. In such cases, it may be wise to invite the guest after your show and pre-record the interview. A pre-recording will mean that you are able to get the best out of the guest while they are on air, as you can edit the interview afterwards to sound entertaining and engaging. Lane explains that a pre-recording does not necessarily mean that the show will not sound natural or real. It simply allows for the editing out of unimportant bits or self-promotion on the part of the guest. We mentioned this earlier. Pre-records are fantastic because they eliminate nonsense. They eliminate things we don't want to hear on air. Makes it concise, makes it entertaining, that we only put the best parts of the conversation on. All right. In the next class, we will continue with interviews. However, is there a question from anybody? Have we thought deeper about who they think the best interviewers are in South Africa? You guys always tease me about who I think is the best, but I want to hear from you guys based on what we've shared today, who you think your favorite presenters are when it comes to the interview element of radio. The stage is yours, guys. Zimi?
I'm thinking, ma'am.
You're still thinking. I'm going to come back to you, no pressure. There's some other students in class that can answer. Sally, who's your favorite interviewer in South Africa?
I'm still thinking about it, man.
Is it that difficult, guys, that you can't think of radio presenters that are great interviewers on their shows? Deborah, I'll come to you afterwards. Tando, in your opinion, who do you think does the best interviews?
Ma'am, don't ask me why, but I'll just say ankle tap.
I'm going to ask you why. Why would you say I mustn't ask you why? Tell me why. I agree with you 150%. Tell me why.
Because most of these interviews sound like natural conversations, you know?
Yeah. Look, one thing about Tap that I'll never take away from him is he's such an esteemed broadcaster. He's probably one of the best storytellers, in my opinion, that we've had in broadcasting. I wasn't necessarily an avid listener, but every time I listened to Tap, I was really intrigued. I joined the Tap. I don't know if I should call you guys Tap Mansion or Tap Brigade, but I first discovered Tap when he was doing evenings, and I thoroughly enjoyed him. I didn't even know that he wasn't black, so I thoroughly enjoyed Tap at that time. I thought he was so fun and spunky and hilarious. And then I connected with him even more when he went through his marriage process and then he eventually got divorced. I was an avid listener of Tap at that time because for me it was just relatable content. It brought a different side of Tap that I didn't know before. But I agree with you, Tando. I think when it comes to Tap, he's probably one of the best that we have, without a shadow of a doubt. Storytelling for me is literally his biggest weapon. So I'm with you on that one. Anything else you want to add, Tando?
No, it's fine, bro.
Dope. Anybody else? Masbulele? I think you said you're in the library, so you can't chat. So I'll be expecting you to throw in a message there in our chat section. Tebogo saying, Robert Marawa and T-Boss. And all of them very different, right? Robert Marawa, solely sports. I've been listening to him for the past 2 days, by the way. So I'm finding this answer very fascinating. I love Robert. Robert is so invested in his craft. He knows sports like the back of his hand, and his conversations are so smooth. I think they were mourning the loss of a Sundowns legend the other day, and how he conducted that interview with so much, sympathy and empathy for the person that was in studio for me was just extraordinary. Annalem Tota, for me, number one. I'm not going to change it. Probably one of the best interviewers that we have. I fell in love with Anele. Funny enough, not even on radio. I fell in love with her when she did Three Talk. I did not miss a single Three Talk episode when she did it. I was so invested in it. And I just think that she just had a way with people. She could speak to anybody. I mean, from a Somizi to a Kanying Bao to just an ordinary citizen in the country. And the conversations would just be as impactful every single time. So I agree with you on that one. T was yes. Sorry, for some reason I thought T was touched. T was without a shadow of a doubt. I think if there's anybody who's charming in this industry, it has to be T-Boss. He is so smooth and he knows his composite listener like nobody on earth. He knows that his show is listened to by women who loves to talk about relationships, and he's a smooth talker. T-Boss. So for me, again, Naya, sitting probably in my top three. If I had to select my top three, I think in that order, I'm with you there, Deboho. That's my order of top three. Really, really adore Tibos. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. Tap would come in as well. If I had to put him in my top five, he'd be in there as well. Deboho says all these presenters do their interviews in a funny way that's relatable, great storytellers. Their interviews are conversational. A very important element, guys, right? You need to be conversational. If it's not conversational, then for me, just sounds like a presentation. I want it to sound like it's two friends having a chat and having the time of their lives. And the list that you guys have mentioned here is absolutely correct. I agree 150%. But surely there should be other people that you think are great interviewers, guys, in South Africa that you'd like to share? Simi, Seli? Are we still thinking?
Ma'am.
Talk to me.
Is it okay to just say that I just like the presenter's voice when they're talking?
Is tell me about great voices when you're a presenter. We spoke about this in the early classes. There's nothing wrong with liking someone's voice, but what did we say about someone's voice and them being a presenter? You guys remember? Do you guys remember what we said about voices and presenting?
Yes,
this is
ma'am.
like one of our initial class. What did we say about it?
Ma'am, we said that your voice doesn't really matter. What matters is how you deliver it.
150%. I'm not going to penalize you for liking a presenter because they've got a good voice, Zimi. Trust me and believe that when it comes to a good voice and a nice, sexy, sultry voice, I'm also inside. Right? I love a presenter with a beautiful voice. I like to be taken by a presenter with a beautiful voice. But their ability to conduct an interview has got nothing to do with their voice. You guys understand, right?
Yes.
Their voice is great, might be charming, might be deep, but that is not an indication of a great interview. We're together, Nizimi.
Yes,
based on what we've gone through in class. There's a certain criteria, there's certain things that go into it, and none of them, say anything about having a great voice in order for an interview to be great. You can like the presenter for their voice. That could be the reason why you listen to them. Others could be big fans. Others could have crushes on these presenters. 150%. If that's why you listen to a presenter, then I can't hold it against you. But I want to know who your great interviewers are in South Africa.
Okay.
Yes, Simi, go ahead.
I like the voice, but it's the way we speak. It sounds so natural, but I don't even know this person's name. But I do know that he was show Dala with Unati from Idols.
Glenn Lewis. What a man. Glenn Lewis. He's on Radio 2000 now, doing Drive. Doing Breakfast. Is he doing Breakfast or Drive?
I don't know.
What's Paul doing? Paul is doing drive. So I think Glenn Lewis is breakfast.
Glenn
I agree with
Lewis,
you.
yes.
I love Glenn. Glenn is like your friend, from
Yeah,
back home who's sitting on a crate. I mean, I don't even think Glenn Lewis drinks, but he looks like he could be holding a glass of something nice and tasty. He is that
and he's
relatable. So I agree with you. I'm a Glenn Lewis fan through and through. You guys are making my list too long now because now he's also in my top whatever. He's also in my top whatever because he genuinely makes people feel like they've known him forever. That is the might of Glenn Lewis.
he
Because
sounds
Glenn
like
Lewis does breakfast. He's really good. I'm with you there, me. Definitely with you.
yes.
Tebogo says, can I throw in Kuzo Teledi? Her empathetic nature adds an interesting element in her interviewing skills, and she takes full advantage of that. She knows that that's what makes her a brilliant broadcaster, is the fact that she feels. Kuzo feels. A lot of presenters are very scared of being vulnerable. They're very scared of sharing how they feel. But if there's one thing our dear Kuzo Teledi will do, is lay her heart on the floor. And because of that, more and more people feel like she's approachable, feel like, she can help them with their problems, and feel like they can open up to her because she's got a nurturing aura. So yeah, this list is getting long, guys. I'm loving it. Is there anybody else would like to add to our list? Other great interviewers that we love in South Africa, and the reasons why these people would make so much sense and why they're conversational and why you can tell that they prep. You can tell that, they ask questions by being active listeners and not necessarily based on the notes that they receive from their producer. Let's do one more, then we can wrap it up. How do I feel about Mo Flavor? I cannot deny his success rate as a radio broadcaster against somebody with a gorgeous voice. Very, it brings you in. I think I unfortunately missed all the Mo Flavor eras. I didn't catch him on Breakfast. I didn't at Y or any other show at Y, and I never caught him on Breakfast at Metro because by the time he made the transition, I was then working for 947, and obviously I was at work, so I've never been able to hear Mo Flavor, but I can believe that he is a thoroughly skilled individual who's able to have a conversation, who's able to hold it down, and like Zimi would say, with a fantastic and gorgeous voice. Do you agree with me, Zimi?
Yes, ma'am, I do agree with you.
Okay, I like that. Is that all? Are we done with our great
Also,
interviewers in South Africa? Tando?
Mac G has to be one of them also. He did radio at a point.
Which one?
Mac G, please, Mac G.
When are you a big fan of Meg G, Wayne? If there's one thing about you, Tando, I'm with you. He can be, quite an interesting character, but Meg G has got a natural flair. He's got it. Also very relatable, also able to bring himself down to be on the very same level with whoever it is that he's interviewing. He's got a great network of people in the industry that he's, created relationships with. And he just has a flair of like being able to touch points in people that people don't necessarily expect. So again, a shock jock, but definitely with a purpose. I'm with you on that one as well. I definitely think McGee has got it. He's thoroughly talented. We can't take that away from him, no matter how controversial he is. Zimi?
Ma'am, what about DJ Fresh?
Oh, yes. I mean, he's been out of the limelight for obvious reasons. But again, somebody who also is so great at telling you a story about how he met his guest. Fresh feels like he's met every single person that he interviews. It's that deep. He'd be like, we met in 1960. His memory is crazy. There's one thing about Fresh that I admire is he remembers everything. Everything. He remembers where he meets people. He remembers dates of, I don't know when, what he was doing, how he was doing it. But because of that, people already feel like if I've met this person before, then surely we would have gotten along like a house on fire. So he's got that ability to make a guest feel like I know you, So therefore, you know, we already have a relationship. Absolutely love Fresh. Cannot deny it. Yo, I this top 5 of mine. But can I put him in my top 5? I mean, my list is long. But again, definitely also in my top 5. My top 5 can consist of 10 people. It's fine, guys. We're okay with my top 5 being 10 people.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, guys. You're sweet. Anybody else? Any questions? If not, we can wrap it up. Somebody's typing. No other questions from the unmuters? You guys are happy? That question is not coming through anymore. All right, guys, then I guess that's a wrap from us for today. Thank you so much for joining this class. It's been interesting, as you know, always interactive. We'll be discussing interviews again, but I do encourage you guys that you start doing your assessments. Listen to the different radio stations. Listen to the different segments of what is required in your assessments. Have you guys been listening to the competition taking place on Ayanda Show?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you guys been listening to Talk Radio?
Yeah.
Who's listened to 702, Power FM, SAFM? What are the similarities that you guys are picking up from all these stations? It's okay, so not necessarily talk, but we've listened to the competition. Pop culture stories, how are we feeling about that? Do we understand what pop culture is? Do we know what kind of stories we're looking for?
Yes, ma'am.
We are okay. Now we went through it thoroughly already.
Yeah.
All right, cool. If there's nothing else from anybody, thank you so much. I will post this lesson as it is on Core Campus as well. So if you want to revise it, you can. And just to help the other students, since I'm unavailable tomorrow. But there is a shorter version of this very same class that's going to be loaded on Core Campus as well. So you'll find 2 versions. You can find the version that's a bit longer because obviously it's interactive, or you can find the shorter version as well on YouTube. Hey guys, have a good one. Love you, bye.
Love you, bye.
Bye.